science-based findings, a lot of data from fishermen, and you'll see in a moment why that is. Because both of us work with the New York State DEC, with the Division of Marine Resources in Kings Park on Long Island, and we're both in data management. We're the first receivers of fishermen's VTRs, or their vessel trip reports, so basically their raw data that they're giving to us about their catch. My name is Amanda Dauman. I am with the Data Management Unit as a contractor with Cornell Cooperative Extension of Suffolk County.
And I'm Kyle Majid. Actually, I have a background in ecology, not fisheries, but I've been with data management for about 3 years now, so I guess I'm converting to a fish data analyst in undue time.
Okay. So we said a southern connection. New York has always really had a southern connection, especially during the summer when our waters get nice and warm. So of course we get the Gulf Stream coming up near our waters, and it basically drops off the kids. Little fish larvae will suddenly be found in all of our bays. People do catch them quite a bit because they never really get to make it back down to the south. Of course, we also have our charismatic megafauna also come by, all of our sea turtles. Dolphins have been showing up a lot more, and we also get an influx of shark species and their abundance. But what we're really focusing on is there's starting to be a rise in abundance of certain southern species. Some of them come and they stay a lot longer, and they're starting to become a larger subset of our local fisheries. These include Atlantic croaker and spot especially, have a lot of big sport fishermen saying that they're seeing more blacktip sharks, but today we are going to focus on cobia.
Okay, so this is data sourced from our sister unit in Diogenes. Thank you to Ben, Maddie, and Emily that are also in the room. This is data that they collected the Western Long Island Sound study. So they take a seine net, they throw it in the water, you pull it ashore, see what you get. They take numbers of all the species and count. I do want to make a caveat that the test or the study is done between the months of May and October. So it does not reflect winter months when we would see a difference in species that are more preferential to cold. However, from the start of it, back in like the 1980s to the current time, there's a general trend towards more species that have a warm water preference than cold water. For people like me that don't have an innate knowledge of that, warm water would be things as cobia, spot, striped bass, and black sea bass, while cold water are more associated with the Northeast and higher into the Canadian provinces, so Atlantic herring, cod, tautog or blackfish, and winter flounder.
Right, so a little bit about cobia. Why are we focusing on them? We are focusing on cobia today because this is a really conspicuous species. As you can see, they can grow very large. They can get to be about 6 feet long. And the way that they swim, many people would mistake them for a shark. And they are a very important recreational fishery, all up and down the coast where they occur, but they really are known for being a sport fish down in the south. So when they do come up here, it's noticeable. Somebody catches one and all of a sudden it's big news. But they do occur all worldwide in these tropical and warm temperate waters. In North America, cobia are the largest abundance is near the Chesapeake and all the way down into the Gulf of Mexico. So there are 2 U.S. stocks. One is the Gulf cobia. These are all the Gulf states to the east coast of Florida, so all of Florida and the Gulf. But we're going to be focusing on Atlantic cobia because we're in New York. And they are occurring from Georgia all the way up the northeast. Right now that's Georgia to New York, but in recent times Rhode Island has become part of that list. And what's really important is that this animal is follows the temperatures. So they will winter offshore, you'll see them go all the way out, or they'll go south for the winter. They do not like cold water at all. And then they'll start to come back inshore once the waters reach 68 to 77 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's important. Because
so, as most of you know, you've had to go through college, you got your degrees. Global warming has been, talks of everything. It's been involved in stuff, so we're not going to spend much time on this. It's your classic everything is turning red map. But we just circled in that our region off our coast seems to be warming at a faster rate than most of the tropics and rest of the world, other than like around Japan and a little bit off Australia and Argentina. So,
Right. So for New York in particular, temperatures in the state have warmed quicker than the rest of the country, pretty much. Average temperatures have risen at almost 3 degrees Fahrenheit in New York State. And what they're seeing worldwide also is that marine redistribution, so populations are moving due to this warming in marine systems faster than they are in terrestrial systems. So this is also seen by the fishermen. So like we said, we're hearing really directly from the fishermen. These are all big news stories about cobia in our waters. New York, New Jersey, even the Long Island Sound, cobia have been found. In fact, there was quite a record-breaking cobia that was just caught off of Connecticut. And we hear from fishermen all around the island about that they're seeing these species, and you know, they're confused and stuff like, wow, we're like really seeing this a lot. And that's pretty significant to hear people from the public start to notice these changes. And they can be backed up with science.
okay, so as we said before, it's a more recreational species. There's very limited commercial data collected on them. However, being the data management unit, I pulled our commercial data, which shows commercial landings of cobia from 2015 to current. As a data person, this is awful. There's not many data points. It's just to show you we have a spike. It happens to be in 2020. We have no idea why. It could have just been more people were out fishing because no one was at work. But it also could be, you know, that's just an extra warm summer that they decided to stay a little longer. It's hit or miss. Even in recreational landings, it's really hard to capture cobia. It's not a foolproof system. There is federal standards, but it's not catching everything. They do a lot of extrapolation based off one fish being caught. They'll like predict what New York landed. So for New York itself, we have like 3 data points. Not a great idea. So this was causing New York to have to switch policy making back and forth continuously based on if one fish was landed or not. That led New York to start joining with more southern states. So Virginia to New York have made this mid-Atlantic region for cobia landings. That way we can have a unified policy. Virginia is the lion's share of our district. It is the 90% pull for all the states. Mainly in the Chesapeake. Maryland, it would be your second. So New York has aligned ourselves there to limit the stress of 1 year we have to follow federal policy on landings, and the next year we land no fish and get captured out of that. This also has way more data points, so this one is, you know, reliable. These 2 would not pass in any statistical matter.
It's just a show and tell. Hey, we found them. That's cool. So as Kyle was saying, there's been some management up and down, but for the most part, we can see like this timeline of management for the Atlantic cobia, trying to zero in on where they're going. So just in 2017, the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission was basically onboarded to start managing cobia. This was mostly because it was found that most cobia landings were occurring much closer to shore. Of course, like we said, the fish move inshore when the water gets nice and warm, so that's where they were seeing most catches, and they figured that this was a better way to manage them. But then just 2 years later, we had Amendment 1, where the ASMFC was given sole custody of Atlantic cobia. So now they could be responsible for monitoring and closing the fishery by themselves for the Atlantic cobia, which, as to reiterate, that's from Georgia up to New York. And this also established what was called a de minimis situation for states. This status basically said, oh, you don't catch enough cobia to really be important, so you don't have to monitor it so hard. But as Kyle mentioned, once we got 1 fish or 2 fish, then all of a sudden our de minimis status was in question. So that really wasn't working too well. But that's how it's been for a little while here. Addendum 1 just changed quota allocations, and you can see by these allocations of the total allowable catch that recreational has most of it. It's 96% of the Cobia TAC goes to recreational landings. These are not just people on a bridge casting a line, it's also the party boats, the charter boats, and those businesses. But what's really important was 2023, when Addendum 2 came out. This split everything up into a regional mode, basically, instead of just being state to state, which is what Kyle was talking about before when we were lumped in with Virginia. So we're in the northern region. It's now Rhode Island to Virginia, and as an entire region now, we manage Cobia, and we get about 69% of the total allowable catch for our area. And the southern region is North Carolina to Georgia. So it's just that change, and as Cobia keep moving, as we'll see in the next slide, this change will have to keep on playing catch up.
So this was a paper from Croda et al. That was published, and it looked at the future suitable habitat of Cobia over the span of the next 70 to 80 years. They did a few different things. They took temperature data from 1994,
Yes.
94 to 2015. Inside of that, they averaged it out for this climb. It became like climatology, the average path. However, they took the outlier of the coldest year, which was 1996, and the warmest year of 2012 as your cap ends for a more extreme difference. So then they modeled out suitable habitat for both February and October when the water's freezing and the water is at its warmest generally. These numbers here consist of years in the future. So this would be 0 to 20 years, this would be 20 to 40, so on and so forth. So in the winter, it gets cold. You can see as things turn red, that is where the most suitable habitat is. And we actually, over the years, see a loss of suitable habitat during the month of February for Cobia on inshore properties. However, in October, when the water is nice and warm and they're closer to shore, that red section over the 20 block years starts moving up to our region a little bit closer and away from the Georgia and North Carolina region. So we're expected to see them stay and move up here as we have their habitat. It also is expected that New Jersey will be the prime location as the majority will be off their shores within the next 60 to 80 years according to their models and statistics. So going from there, we just have our references.
Yep, these are our references.
And our giant cobia
Our
drawn by
giant Cobia.